Hello, this is the February meeting of the Jenkins Cloud Native SIG, and we have, oops, this dropped. We have 3 things in the agenda, 4 things in the agenda, and we will start with Craig from Google. We cannot hear you. Nothing yet. No. Maybe we can give you some time, and Thomas, you can go first.
Yes, I can go first. So let's share my screen. It's very strange.
There is.
There is.
We see 2 of them.
2 of them. I'll error disconnect. Wait a second, please.
It seems we have connectivity issues.
Yeah.
Jak się wychodzi tego ten?
We can hear you, but now the video is
problem with.
Yeah, it happens sometimes in Hangouts. You would have to reconnect to the call to fix that.
Yeah.
Just have a few colleagues who experience it almost every meeting.
I have to reconnect. So give me some time.
Okay.
We'll need to cut this part of the video, I guess.
And Craig, I don't think we can hear you yet. So
okay, so Tomek is rebooting his computer. Be right back in 1 minute. Sorry, guys.
Thomas. Okay. Maybe I should go, or Oleg, you also have some things?
Yeah, but I have a really quick update. So if you want, we can start from it.
Sure.
Okay. Full disclaimer, I just moved to a new laptop today, so if my screen hangs or whatever, well, I believe it's to this meeting. Okay, does it work?
Yeah.
Okay, so my topic on the agenda is actually to briefly summarize what we have in Google Summer of Code and what is related to Cloud Native SIG. Before that, we had a few project members joining the SIG meetings and other meetings to discuss what we have. But yeah, just to summarize, today there will be announcements about Google Summer of Code in the Jenkins project. I cannot disclose what will be these announcements, but I can summarize what we have in terms of project ideas. So Google Summer of Code is just international and probably the biggest in the world program for open source contributors. Many students work on various projects for 3 months, and Jenkins participates in this activity. And we have a number of project proposals for this year created by Jenkins contributors. So you may see a pretty long list of projects, and some of the projects are actually directly related to Cloud Native Special Interest Group. For example, if you go to 6 JSOC, yeah.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Yeah. So here in pluggable storage, we have 2 links. It's proposed projects. We have a project for fingerprint storage. We have a project for workspaces. So cloud features for external workspace manager plugin, external fingerprint storage. These guys are here. So if somebody is interested, you can just join this project ID and discuss it with potential contributors. But in addition to that, we also have a number of other projects which definitely lay in the SIG's interest area. For example, we have remoting improvements like remoting over Apache Kafka with advanced features for Docker and Kubernetes. We have monitoring feature for better integration of networking and Prometheus. And yeah, there is a lot of various fine-grained proposals for other things. But yeah, for the special interest group, there may be a number of projects which might be interesting. And of course, all projects like Kubernetes Operator or various Jenkins FileRunner-based flavors, they could be also be a part of Google Summer of Code if somebody is interested in mentoring students or just working with them. So yeah, if you have any interest, let us know in JSOC SIG, and we will help to prepare more project idea and to get it published. So this is a quick update. And again, I cannot say whether we are accepted or not. The announcement will land in few hours. But yeah, if we are accepted, we will start reaching to all special interest groups and specifically to this one. So yeah, if you have any ideas in mind, just let us know. So this is a really quick update. Any questions? Okay. So yeah, if you have interest in Google's Summer of Code, let us know. And yeah, if not, still be prepared to some cool projects we are going to embark on.
Are the project ideas closed already, or?
No, they are not closed. So we will be accepting project ideas for at least 1 or maybe 2 weeks. So if we get accepted, the deadline for student applications will be in late March. Until that time, it will be potentially possible to propose new project ideas. But yeah, we ask all interested people to propose ideas early because yeah, JSOC hasn't officially started now for students, but we had students reaching out to us even 3 months ago. And many of the students already did some contributions. They drafted some project ideas. So de facto, the project has been already started.
How we can reach you? How can I
Okay.
contact you?
Yeah, it's easier. Just a second, I will share my screen again. So if you see the screen, if you just go to the landing page, it's projects JSOC. You may see that there is a number of contacts here. So for example, we have separate GitHub chat and separate mailing list. So these are two main communication channels. And both of these channels are pretty active. So you will just send us a message and yeah, we will start from there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Thanks, Alec.
Thank you, Tom.
I guess we can continue with Craig now.
Hi, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Hey, excellent. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but the old IT crowd adage, have you tried turning it off and on again, worked. So let me share my screen and we will get this party started. Okay, so basically what I'm gonna do today is I'm just gonna talk about what's going on with Jenkins on GCP. And then I'm going to give you a tour of some of the plugins that we support. I'll give you a demo of our latest one, which is our GKE plugin. And then I'm going to use this as an opportunity to get feedback from the community here, because we're interested in finding out what it is you guys would like us to work on next. So without further ado, just before I go any further, can you guys see my slides all right?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So just to give you a little bit of background for those who may not know, my team that I work on is called the Cloud Graphite Platforms team, and we're a team underneath Google Cloud. And we're a pretty unique team industry-wide in that we are dedicated engineering resources for building out integrations with open source platforms like Jenkins. Our team supports some other platforms and tools. The most notable would be Terraform and Cloud Foundry. Basically, my sub-team is responsible for building out integrations with CI/CD platforms like Jenkins. And it is my team's job to look at the Jenkins on GCP experience as a holistic end-to-end experience. And we really treat that like a product. We collaborate with our partners at companies like CloudBees so that we can cross-pollinate and we can sync on priorities, and we can work together to deliver a great user experience for our GCP customers running Jenkins on GCP. And as a part of that is we bring enterprise level support to the integrations that we provide. We bring the kind of engineering excellence that is expected with a Google product to our integrations, and also and bringing the documentation that has become the expectation when integrating with the Google Cloud product. So again, we're treating the entire holistic user experience of a Jenkins user on GCP as a Google Cloud product. And just to give you a bit of a contrast, my team is relatively new. We were founded, at least my sub-team, the platforms sub-team, was founded relatively recently. And prior to our team's founding, this was kind of the old experience that Jenkins on GCP users would get. And for those of you not familiar, this is what's called a patchwork quilt. So what the previous experience is various product teams throughout Google Cloud would invest a little bit of effort into building out a Jenkins integration for their product, and then they would check that checkbox and they would move on. And what that was left with was a smattering of Jenkins integrations with various Google Cloud products that didn't have very good user engagement, didn't have very good user level support, and had varying degrees of documentation and varying degrees of the amount of engineering effort that went into them. So what my team is doing now is we are now trying to change that story so that we focus on a core set of the plugins that we kind of think are the table stakes plugins for the Jenkins on GCP experience. And we have taken ownership of those. So we've recently taken ownership of the storage and the OAuth plugin. Our team published the GCE plugin and recently the GKE plugin. And we're bringing all of those core plugins up to a consistent level of user support, a consistent level of documentation, and a consistent level of user engagement. And so right now, these are the 4 core plugins that my team supports. And I'll share these slides. I'll add a link to the meeting notes so that you all can have access to these links. And another couple things I wanted to call out is thanks to the Kubernetes engine plugin that Carlos works on, we have a great story for running Jenkins on GKE. And Vic, who was our solutions architect, who many of you may know, he actually wrote these 2 solutions guides, one aimed at the architecture that you would set up for running on GCE, and another aimed at running the architecture or setting up the architecture to run on GKE. So I highly recommend checking out these links if you haven't already. They provide some great getting started steps if you're interested in either of those scenarios. And then I provide links to each of the 4 plugins that our team currently supports. And stay tuned, we'll be releasing more as well. So really quickly, before I go on to the demo, I just wanted to give you an idea of what is on our roadmap right now. And hopefully coming out of this meeting, we'll be adding to the roadmap given your all's feedback. So right now, in the Jenkins 2 side of the story, we've heard from a number of partners and customers that getting our existing set of Jenkins 2 plugins to support declarative pipelines is a priority. So that's going to be priority number 1 for us going forward, and hopefully within a couple months we'll be able to kick out some new releases that will support declarative pipelines for GKE. And Google OAuth, as well as Google Cloud Storage. GCE is more of a cloud setup, so we'll have to investigate if it makes sense to integrate those as declarative pipelines, but if in that investigation we find that there are convenience adds by doing that, we'll also integrate it there. And then another big one that customers seem very interested in is having support for within the GKE plugin to be able to deploy to GKE on-prem. So we're also prioritizing that as well. And then a couple of new integrations that we're have on our roadmap are a stack driver plugin for Jenkins 2, as well as providing a GCS artifact manager plugin. And then for Jenkins X, which we all want to support because it's the future of Jenkins and we want to go there with you. We're still formulating what we would like to prioritize as far as what Jenkins X integrations we want to work on. We're collaborating with our folks from CloudBees to figure out what they think is important. But also I'm hoping that another piece of information that we'll get coming out of this meeting is what you, the community, thinks is important and what you guys would like us to prioritize as far as Jenkins X integrations with Google Cloud services. Okay, so for the demo, I'm going to give you a kind of a broad tour showing you, what it all looks like to work with the 4 core plugins that we support. And then our newest plugin, GKE, I'll actually give you a live demo of how that works and show you it deploying build artifacts from the Jenkins pipeline into a cluster running on GKE. So without further ado, let's load up the Jenkins environment that I have set up for this demo, and we'll kick things off. Okay, so I'll start off with probably the most table stakes of all the plugins, which is the Google OAuth plugin. And this kind of underlies all the other plugins. It's what enables you to be able to set up credentials within Jenkins using your Google service accounts. So when you go into your credentials interface and you click Add Credentials within Jenkins, one of the options that you get when you've installed the Google OAuth plugin is to be able to install a Google service account from a private key. And this is an account that you can set up with the G-Cloud CLI, and you can also grant it permissions to, if you're working with GCE, you can grant it permissions to GCE with the Google Cloud CLI. And then another thing you can do with the CLI is you can actually export a JSON key that has the credentials you can use to authenticate with. So basically what you need to do here, once you've selected this, is you enter what project name you want. Basically, it's the project that corresponds to the service account you set up, and then you select the JSON key file that you've exported for that service account. I've already set up the service account for my project, so I don't need to do it again. But basically what this enables you to do is then downstream, the GCE plugin will be able to utilize that service account for authenticating against the compute API. The GKE plugin will be able to utilize that for the GKE API, and the Google Cloud Storage plugin will be able to use that to authenticate against the Google Cloud Storage API. And then another pretty fundamental plugin that we have is the GCE plugin, and that enables you to set up a cloud. Once you've installed it, you go down to underneath the system configuration for Jenkins, you can go down to cloud. Once you've installed the plugin, it gives you an option to, here, let me hide this really quick. It gives you the option to select Google Compute Engine as a cloud that you can configure. And this enables you to run your pipeline workload on agents running in VMs inside of GCE. And essentially what you need to do here is you need to specify what project you want to use. You then select your credentials you want to use. I've already set up my service account credentials via the OAuth plugin, so I've selected the ones I've already set up here. And some of the initial options that you have to configure up here is you can set an instance cap. So for example, if you don't want to use any more than 100 instances, you can set that up here. But the real meat of what you can do is actually in the instance configuration here. So you can set up quite a few different instance configuration options. So these are VM instances that you're configuring here. You can set up what labels you want to be associated with them, so that when you go to set up your jobs, you can specify I want, and you can have multiple instance configurations. You can say I want jobs matching my Windows label to run against my Windows VM. You can say I want my jobs against my Linux label to run against my Linux VMs. We do support Windows. We allow you to specify Windows SSH credentials that you can use. And then here you can say what region you want your instances deployed in. But the other really useful thing is, see if I can find it. The machine, advanced. So you can specify what kind of machine you want to use. So these are the GCE VM configuration SKUs, and you can look this up on the GCE documentation to get the details. But for example, if you want to use a 16-core CPU, you can do that. Or if you want to have an army of smaller machines, you can select the small one. But probably the biggest and most important option that you can configure here is preemptible. And I highly recommend that people consider using this preemptible option, because what happens when you enable this checkbox is you get an 80% across the board discount on your VM core hour usage billing rate. And that's because you're basically telling Google Cloud that I'm allowing these VMs to be preempted by higher priority work. But if you're running a Jenkins pipeline, you don't notice that. I mean, if a VM gets preempted, meaning it gets rebooted, if it's in the middle of a workload, the Jenkins master can handle that scenario, right? I mean, we we're working in an environment where workloads are recoverable and jobs can recover when one of the agents goes down and comes back up again. So in a workload like Jenkins, which is a batch sort of job workload, we highly recommend that people consider using the preemptible option here, and that has a significant savings to customers. And so this is the kind of the de facto recommendation that I give to customers who are wondering how they should configure their Jenkins to run on GCE, is definitely run using preemptible. You can also configure what CPU architectures you want to use. You can configure startup scripts. If your workload requires GPUs, you can configure that here. You can configure what networks you want it to use. And also, if there's a particular boot disk image you want to use, you can select that here. So Google Cloud comes pre-installed with all these various OS images that you can use right off the bat. But if you want to use one of your own, you can upload that through the gcloud API. I'm sorry, the gcloud command line tool, and then it'll show up here in this dropdown. So lots of really cool ways that you can configure how to run your agents on GCE. And again, if you're looking for an end-to-end solutions guide on how to set this up, I would check out this solutions guide here that we've written up that walks you through like setting up this entire architecture. So that's the GCE plugin. And then before I get into the demo, one more plugin I want to highlight for you, which is the GCS plugin. And this is what enables you to upload things and download things from buckets in Google Cloud Storage as a part of your pipeline. So once you've installed the GCS plugin, you get two options that are added to your build steps here. One is called Google Cloud Storage Upload, and the other is Download. So with Download, if you would like to download an artifact that is in a Google Cloud Storage bucket and incorporate it into your workspace as a part of your pipeline, then this would enable you to do this. As I mentioned before, getting support for this in the declarative pipeline DSL is a P1 for us. So you'll be able to do this in a short amount of time using the syntax that you're familiar with in pipeline. And then additionally, if you want to, at various stages throughout your build, upload artifacts that have been produced as a part of the pipeline, then you can select an upload build step as well. And it's the same thing. You specify a local file pattern, you specify where you want it to go in GCS, and then it will upload it. And it uses the Google OAuth credentials. So it's automatically selected this one because it's the only Google OAuth credential I've configured. But if you have multiple service account credentials added to your credential store in Jenkins, they'll all show up here. So that's the GCS plugin. And then the one I want to show you an actual demo of, because it's our newest one, is the GKE plugin. And let me just quickly grab the URL. And this is my GitHub profile if anybody's interested. This is actually a picture of, oh, I can't actually zoom in on it. This is a picture of me at a local cat cafe here in Seattle. So if you guys are ever in Seattle, I highly recommend going to Meowtropolitan. It's a very fun experience. But anyways, I set up a repository that just has a manifest in it so that I can demonstrate deploying to a GKE cluster using this plugin. And this just uses an Nginx deployment, so nothing fancy here. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up our Git repository here so that this repository will be pulled down into our workspace. And then we're going to select the Google Kubernetes engine build step. And this is what shows up after you've selected or after you've installed the GKE plugin. So what you're going to see here is a few options to configure this deployment. So essentially, the main value add that the GKE plugin provides for you is it does the negotiation against the GKE API so that first of all, it'll authenticate using the service account credits that you set up with Google OAuth. And then what it'll do is it will actually encapsulate the negotiation of the GKE API for you. So once you've selected you've entered what project you want to use, so this, if I had multiple projects associated with the service account, they would show up here. Then you select what zone you're operating in, and then it will automatically talk to the GKE API for you and get a list of all the clusters that you've set up in that zone. And so we want to deploy to our test cluster. And then the other thing you specify is what the manifest is within your workspace. And so what it's doing behind the scenes is it's communicating with the GKE API when you actually execute this, and it's grabbing the cluster information from the GKE API, and it's getting the authentication tokens that you need, and then it's actually creating a temporary kubeconfig file in your workspace so that it can then execute kubectl apply against your manifest. And for those of you not familiar with Kubernetes, essentially the kubeconfig file is how Kubernetes encapsulates authentication against the cluster that you're actually deploying your manifest to. So again, the main problem that this plugin solves is how do I, using a Google service account, automatically authenticate against the GKE API and then get the credentials for deploying to that cluster into my workspace so that I can then run my kubectl apply locally. And it also, just as a convenience for you, will also run that kubectl apply for you. So that's basically what this plugin provides. So when we save this and we run it, we'll take a look at the output for this so that you can see what's actually going on behind the scenes, and then we'll show you what is actually deployed. So it's successfully run. Let's take a look at the console output. So the first thing it did is it grabbed our repo from Git, and then it after it communicated with the GKE API, it created a local kubeconfig file here, which is what we're seeing here. And it's basically telling kubectl to use this local generated kubeconfig file as the context that we want to operate in. And then the final thing that it's doing is it's running kubectl apply using that kubeconfig file that we generated against the manifest that was specified in the configuration of the plugin, which allows Kubernetes to then run your deployments using the build artifacts that you've generated. So theoretically speaking, the workflow would look something along the lines of my Jenkins pipeline runs the build against my project, publishes a container image from this build to either Docker Hub or GCR, so that then as the final step, the actual deployment of it can reference that container image that was generated and just run a Kubernetes deployment from that. So then if we take a look at kubectl here, and we do, just to verify which context we're operating in. So we're operating in the test cluster that we configured via the plugin, and then we do kubectl get services. You can see, let me actually verify that I'm, so container clusters get credentials central, let's see, and okay, cool. So when we run git pods, and we didn't actually create a service, that's why it's not showing up. We just did replicas of this template. Okay, so we can see now that the Nginx pods have been set up using this image that already exists on Docker Hub. But essentially, if you were using this as a part of your workload, you would swap this out with the image name for the container image that your pipeline had built. So essentially, this has run this deployment for us and set up replicas of our app here inside of our test cluster. And just to bring it back to the configuration, so if we go back to our demo project, back to the configuration, again, this is our test cluster that we had selected, and this was our zone, and this was our project. So that's the demo. And then the next thing I want to go into is community feedback. So I want to be greedy with this opportunity and basically ask you guys, well, first I'll do some Q&A if there's any questions about any of the plugins, but then finally, what I'm really interested in learning from you folks is those of you who currently use any of our core plugins, are there any burning features that you would like to see aside from the ones that are already on our development roadmap? Are there any other like big holes that you as a customer or you via your customers know about that you would really like to see integrated in the Jenkins 2 space? And then the really top of mind thing for me is in Jenkins X, because this is all greenfield for us, you guys really have an opportunity here to let us, as the Google engineers working on these Jenkins X integrations, let us know what are the integrations with which services do you think are very important, and this will help inform what we set as our development roadmap going forward. So without further ado, I'll stop sharing my screen and open up the floor. First of all, the questions. Are there any questions about the demo? Going once.
So you were saying you're adding pipeline support soon, or?
Yeah, so that's our P1 right now, is adding pipeline support for GKE and GCS, and we're going to investigate if it makes sense in GCE as well. But for GKE and GCS, that's our P1, is adding pipeline support for those. Any other questions? Okay, so there's no other questions about the demo. I just want to open it up to the floor and ask you all, what either Jenkins 2 integrations would you really like to see us work on, or what Jenkins X integrations do you think would be very helpful to the community and to Jenkins users in general?
Yeah, one question about configuration as code. So you presented the configuration of the plugins in Jenkins Web UI.
Yeah.
But do you plan integration with configuration as code plugin?
The pipeline, the declarative pipeline?
No, there is another plugin, Jenkins CI/configuration as code plugin. Effectively, it allows configuring Jenkins via specifying YAML configs.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I'll put the link to the meeting notes.
Perfect. No, that's good feedback to have. Yeah, we can definitely look into that. Do you know, is there a significant portion of the Jenkins community that uses that plugin?
Well, it's been widely adopted, so it has almost 1,000 stars.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure
Okay.
how many installations, but it's definitely trending.
Okay.
And yes, some build flows, for example, Carlos will be presenting the Jenkins file runner later. There are also some integrations between the Jenkins file runner and the configuration as code.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I believe that it will have much more adoption soon.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, that's great feedback to have for sure. And that's just to verify, it's Jenkins configuration as code plugin?
Yeah, I'll put the link to the meeting notes.
Okay, great. Yeah, we can definitely look into that. And is that is an extension for that also available in as a Jenkins X extension, or is that just a Jenkins 2 plugin right now?
Well, Jenkins X uses configuration as code in the serverless mode. So serverless mode is used. So JCast plugin is used to configure serverless mode in Jenkins X.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think it has other integrations in Jenkins X right now.
Okay. All right.
Probably we'll have more in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe so.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's popular because everybody wants to configure everything as YAML today.
Right.
Oh, really?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so speaking of Jenkins X, like which services, if you had your dictator for a day hat on and you could just magically have these 3 Google Cloud services working natively in Jenkins X right now, which would those be? What do you think are like the prime targets for us to implement integrations for as far as Jenkins X and Google Cloud?
For me, it would be interesting to have a better stack driver integration.
Stack driver? Okay.
Specifically, there was specifically for pipeline. So there was a research project for pluggable storage, and currently pipeline supports setting up custom log storages. And for example, we have AWS CloudWatch proof of concept implementation. And it might be helpful to have something like that for Google Cloud.
Okay.
Yeah, full disclaimer, there is some, so it's in the early access now. So there is no 1.0 release, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And, there is no confirmed plan to have 1.0. But if it happens, I would really like to have stack driver in place.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Stack driver. Got it on the list.
I have shown a stack driver. I mean, it's worse today if you would just want to show like Jenkins X on serverless mode. You just show all the logs go to stack driver, so you can just look in there.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that would be interesting, especially for serverless, is anything related to storage. So every time you do a build, you can store and retrieve data from a blob store.
Okay, so a GCS integration would be important.
Yeah, we've looked at that in the past with like a stash and unstash.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I guess you would unstash before starting your build and then stash the results somewhere, especially for serverless, because if your containers are going away, you need a place to store things permanently.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. Another story which might be interesting, for example, this summer, we have external workspace manager plugin. And one of the ideas for this Google Summer of Code is to have integration with cloud providers. So the idea of this plugin is that you can provision the workspaces on demand, including size of this workspace, etc. So I'm not sure how it would map Google Cloud, but it would be an interesting integration if this project starts. But right now there is plugin, there is extension points, but there is still a lot of work to do before it becomes production ready. Though it's really handy in some pipelines.
Gotcha. So being able to provision workspaces on demand. So the integration point with GCP, are you envisioning that the workspace would be provisioned within GCS, or what are you envisioning as far as like how could Google Cloud help realize that story?
GCS would be reasonable.
Yeah.
So my use case is that I have a user on my Jenkins instance, and this user needs, for example, 20 gigs of storage just to implement his temporary workspace. So obviously with containers, there are some ways to do that. But if you want a permanent storage, which also remains available after, for example, the container termination, it would be nice if a user would be able to just request a storage in his pipeline. And this storage gets provisioned, and he natively works with this provisioned workspace without doing anything else inside his pipeline. And then there may be retention policies, etc., configured for that. So we have part of the equation. We did such workspace provisioning for classic modes like NFS, but obviously we're interested to have cloud providers in this story.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Any other ideas from anyone else? Now's the time. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak, and yeah, and I hope that you guys found this useful. So without further ado, I'll hand the reins back over to Carlos.
Thanks, Greg. It's good to see the progress you're making. Okay, Thomas, are you ready?
Yes, hopefully I'm ready. So I can share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So would you like to introduce Jenkins Kubernetes operator? This new project from Virtus Lab. There is some information about me. My name is Tomasz Sęk. I'm working at Virtual company. I'm DevOps engineer. Currently, I'm fighting with AWS and Azure cloud providers. I'm maintainer of custom Kubernetes distribution, and I'm writing tools in Golang to automate my work and help users to use Kubernetes platform. And how to run Jenkins on top of Kubernetes. Basically, running Jenkins on Kubernetes cluster is not trivial work. Kubernetes platform was released 10 years after the first version of Hudson project. It means that Jenkins couldn't be designed to run on top of it. And what problems you have to solve when you try to run Jenkins on Kubernetes? There's a lot of it. Basically, there is no visibility that Jenkins can't be configured as you want. There's no visibility that what happens to Jenkins. For example, pod can be not running for now, or waiting for this quota was exceeded and can stop again. There is problem with plugins management, generally in Jenkins. And when you try to use PVC for Jenkins home data storage, then can be issued that after detaching this PVC, no new pod can start. We have this issue with AWS Kubernetes cluster. There's no security by default. There is a lot of people with which reinventing a wheel. They build some custom distribution, build some plugins baked in Docker images. There is lack of tests for this this type of custom distributions. So this is not production ready solution. This is our Jenkins operator logo, still work in progress. The blue guy is the Golang official mascot, the Go Goofer, because operator is written in Golang language as Kubernetes. And in the right hand, it has that cake with Kubernetes logo. So everything is in one picture. So what is goals for Jenkins Kubernetes operator? So first one, run Jenkins on top of Kubernetes. This is the simplest one. Another one is put configuration of Jenkins in one place. We can use for this CRDA. I will talk about this later. And we have to keep Jenkins instance configured. Basically, user can change configuration in any time, and we have to make sure that everything is put on Jenkins instance. So we try to make Jenkins immutable. What does it mean? Jenkins master instance should be restorable to desired configured state at any point in time. Any change made to Jenkins configuration that are not in CR, this configuration file, should be removed after Jenkins master restart. in this particular solution, we can avoid snowflake problem when we have one source of true, and when, for example, PVC, where every data for Jenkins located goes crushed, and you have to configure it again every piece. We should obviously scale Jenkins agents to spawn new workloads. And I want to make default configuration secure as much as possible, because you can run Jenkins, but you don't know if it's secure or not. We try to make default configuration secure. Another one, we only want to backup build history, not all entire Jenkins home. I think this is the most important thing to keep between, for example, restarts of Jenkins. Another one is to make errors more visible for end users. For example, you can configure Jenkins init Groovy scripts, and you have to dig into the Jenkins logs, and you don't know it's pass or not, and you can have Jenkins that is not configured as you wish. So we have to some kind inform user that something is not okay. And we want to reduce Jenkins master unavailability, because Kubernetes is very dynamic environment. So Jenkins pod can get restart or killed on very various reasons. So to solve these problems and try to reach these goals, we decide to run this as operator concept. This was introduced by CoreOS, and basically an operator is an application-specific controller that extends the Kubernetes API to create, configure, and manage instance of complex stateful application on behalf of Kubernetes user. It builds upon the basic Kubernetes resource and control concepts, but includes domain of application-specific knowledge to automate command tags. Basically, it can automate some DevOps user task, and it's baked in basically code. The parts of operator. This is the custom resource definition. When we will use as configuration file for Jenkins, basically the custom resource definition API resource allow you to define custom resources. Defining a CRDI object creates a new custom resource with a name and scheme that you specify. The Kubernetes API serves and handles the storage of your custom resources. This is basically storage for Jenkins configuration, and we use controller pattern to be able to react on every change made to, for example, CR or secrets or config maps, and react to make sure that Jenkins is configured as we wish. So overall architecture is very simple. We have a main reconciliation loop, which comes from operator pattern, and this reconciliation loop is split into parts, which is base and user. In the base reconciliation loop, I think I can, yeah, this is more detail. The basis execution loop, we ensure manifests. We create, update, and delete Kubernetes manifests required to run Jenkins. For example, secrets, config maps, pods with Jenkins master, and services, service accounts, and all these Kubernetes resources. Another step, we create Jenkins pod and verify status of Jenkins Kubernetes master. We ensure Jenkins configuration. That means we configure Jenkins instance, including hardening, initial configuration for plugins, etc. So we basically run some Groovy scripts to make sure that, for example, set executors on masters to 0 or disable deprecated JNLP protocols. The last step of the base phase is to create Jenkins API token, and Jenkins will use that to communicate and configure Jenkins, basically. And the base phase is designed to run clean Jenkins without any user changes. The next phase takes care of reconciling user-provided configuration, which includes restore backup for build history. It can be done basically, depends where your backup will be. For example, PVC or I don't know, AWS S3 bucket. It depends. There's a concept of sidecars which will take care about it, and you can basically write your own image to back up your essential information and put it everywhere if you want, basically. Then we configure seed jobs via job DSL plugins to make sure that every job's configuration is stored in Git, so the GitOps pattern. And then we ensure user configuration via Groovy scripts or configuration as a code plugin. And the last step is to configure backup job to ensure that we can backup build history, basically. So I think it's all. This very quick and basically introduction to Jenkins Kubernetes operator. Some questions?
Yeah, it looks a bit complex from the current vision. Do you plan to provide a simplified mode, or do you want to have Jenkins operator as a single implementation with all the configuration management, backup management, etc.? Because yeah, it seems to be overcomplicated for some cases.
Basically, you don't need to use all features. For example, you don't need, I don't know, use configuration as a code plugin. You can write Groovy scripts to configure Jenkins, or you can use only configuration as a code plugin to configure. So it depends what you need. Basically, I don't think it's a good idea to write some simple Jenkins Kubernetes operator with simple features. Basically, if you don't want to use this, just don't. And and it should work with all the features, basically.
How far along are you? I mean, what's the status of the implementation?
Yes. So after gather some feedbacks from Google Groups, we have to change some architecture. We for now we use Jenkins jobs to apply Groovy scripts and backup mechanism, and we want to instead use we basically will execute Groovy scripts via Jenkins API. Because there is security concerns about setting executors on master. We should disable it for by design and let user use it if they want. Basically, there is the one thing. Another thing, we should basically integrate configuration as a code. This is not done yet. And for now, this project is not, I think, well known, but the users post some issues, so we have to take care about it. So for now, it's like alpha stage, I think. So we have to wait to make sure that everything will be covered and CRDI scheme will be defined well. So this is a lot of work basically here.
Thank you.
That's all.
Yeah, thanks.
So thank you very much.
Do you need any help process-wise? So there is a JEP 219 created for Jenkins operator.
Yes. This was submitted for draft status, and yes, if you have time, it will be very thankful if you can help. Basically, so this I really don't like to write documentation. It's not. I like to write code. So
yeah, but good news is that now we have a video recording, so you can just link it from the JEP, and probably it can be a part of the description. Because yeah, I read this JEP carefully before the meeting, and yeah, I watched the slides, and it seems that there is significant difference in terms of the depths of the implementation. JEP seems to be a pretty top level, and yeah, you'll go after many additional topics not referenced there. Is good, but yeah, maybe it's something to be mentioned.
Yes, as you read chapter, there's overall for Jenkins operator, but for specific architecture design, I should wrote another JEP, I think, because it's not too easy to write this in the one.
It's understandable. Okay. And yeah, currently this JEP doesn't have BDFL delegate. Have you already had some discussions with potential candidates?
No, I don't know which person is the best to delegate, basically.
Maybe Carlos.
What?
BDFL delegate for JEP 219.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that could be it. Yeah.
Yeah, so if somebody meets KK, maybe it makes sense to mention that, so he officially assigns it. Or maybe Rick would be interested because, yeah, Rick, I believe, participated in reviews. Who knows?
Okay. Thanks, Thomas. We ran out of time for what was scheduled with the issues at the beginning, but so I'll move where I have some things about Jenkins File Runner on serverless. I'll move that to the next meeting that I'm trying to schedule for the first or second week of March, so it's gonna be soon anyway.
Yeah, second week may be complicated.
No, sorry, I think it's the third week.
Okay, before March 10th, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, question about that. Is everybody in this SIG familiar with Jenkins File Runner? Because if not, since we plan a new meeting, it may make sense to have a short introduction to representation in the beginning.
Yeah, I guess that would make sense. I'll take a note.
Yeah, so I'll check, maybe I'll find a presenter for that.
Oh yeah, if you find somebody, even better. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you for attending.
Yeah. Thank you for organizing that.